Lesson 4, finding the equation of a line. Slope-intercept form, remember that's y equals mx plus b. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. And you're going to have to be able to write an equation in both of these two forms. I also want you to know what a y-intercept is. That's where you cross the y-axis. So it's important to know that if you know what a y-intercept is, like it gives you the y-intercept, that's going to be 0, comma, whatever the number is. So usually, or always, this is your y-intercept. So right here, this b is the y-intercept, and if you were to plot it and you wanted to know what that point was, it would be 0 and then whatever b is. And we'll come back to that in a second so I can show you an actual example using that. Let's do example number 1. I'm going to give you the point 5, 1, and I'm going to tell you that you have a slope of 2, and I'm going to ask you to write an equation in both forms, slope-intercept form and standard form. I'm going to start with y equals mx plus b, and it's important to know that, and I'll write it up here, that this part right here is your slope. That m is slope, and that b is your y-intercept. So when we're going to use this equation, we're going to plug in our slope, which is 2, and we have a point. This is my xy point. So I'm just going to plug that in for x and y. And then I'll have to find what b is because I don't know what b is. So again, I plugged in my slope for n, I plugged in my points for x and y, and I'm going to solve for b so that I can write an equation. So I'm going to have 1 equals 10 plus b, subtract 10, I have negative 9 equals b. So now I can write an equation, and when you have an equation, you're going to have an x and a y, for sure. So most people can plug in the point and find what b is, and then they get confused on the test and they don't know what to do. And they go, oh, how do I write an equation? Well, remember, an equation always has an x and a y. So you're just going to plug in the m and what you found for your b. Well, you already knew that the m was 2, and you found that your b was negative 9. So now this is your equation in slope-intercept form. Now you need to write it in negative form. I'm sorry, in standard form. So what you're going to do is you're going to write it so that it looks like this equation right here. It's x, y, and then a number. What's important to remember about standard form is that you cannot have a negative in the front. No negatives in the front. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, when we do this problem and we rewrite it so it's x, y, and then a number, I would subtract my 2x to the other side, and if you notice, I now have a negative in the front with the x, and that's not allowed. And so what you have to do is you have to change all the signs, and you can do that by multiplying everything by negative 1, which again just means that you're changing all the signs. So this is your slope-intercept form equation, and this is your standard form equation. On the test, you're usually going to have to give me both, so make sure that you know how to do both. Let's try another one, similar to this one. I'm going to give you the point 5 negative, or actually, I'm sorry, let me write something else. I'm going to do that one in a second. I'm going to do negative 1, 3 is my point. And I'm going to say that we have a no slope. So when we don't have a slope, you have to remember from the last section in 3.3, what does a no slope look like? Is it horizontal or a vertical line? Well, if you remember, the word no looks like this. So no slope, that would be a vertical line. So when you go to graph this, or excuse me, write an equation for this, I think the easiest way is to graph it. And what you can do is you can just plot this point, -1, 3, and you know that it has to have a no slope, so it has to go through that point. So you can look and go, okay, well, what is this equation, or what does this graph look like? How can I make an equation out of this? Well, again, from 3, 3, you remember that it's cutting through the x-axis. So you're going to have x equals, and where is it cutting through? It's cutting through at -1. So this would be your answer. So again, whenever you have no slope or zero slope, I honestly think it's easier if you just plot the point and draw the graph real quick and see what it's going to look like. Eventually, you're going to know in your mind where is this going to cross through. So if you can practice this a couple times, you'll make the connections on a no slope and a zero slope just by looking at the point and what it's given as far as the slope. You won't have to actually graph it. That's example number 2. Let's do example number 3. I'm going to give you the point 5, -2, and the slope of 1/3. So this means that I want an equation that contains this point and has this slope. So I am going to use y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug in my points. So here's my x and y. So I plugged in -2 for y, 5 for x. I don't know what b is, but I know my slope is 1/3. So you're going to have -2 equals 5/3 plus b. If you notice, I have a fraction, and I know a lot of you are nervous about fractions, and I keep telling you they're never going to go away. So what you want to do is I have a little trick. To get rid of that 3, you can just multiply everything by 3. That's like distributing the 3 to each part. And you have to do it to everything. Some people only do it to the 2 and the 5/3, and they forget about the b and they get the whole thing wrong. So you have to do it to all 3 parts. So 3 times -2 is -6. The 3's will cancel out here, and I'll just have 5. 3 times b is 3b. And now if you notice, I don't have any fractions anymore, so I can just go ahead and solve this. I'd have -11 equals 3b. Divide by 3. Your b is going to be -11/3. So when you write your equation, you're going to have a y and an x. You're going to plug in your b, it's -11/3. And you're going to plug in your slope, which I gave to you at the top, which is 1/3. And this is your slope-intercept form. Now you have to write it in standard form. And remember, that's x, y, and then a number. So I would move 1/3 over to the other side. 1/3 x, that is. And I would know that I can't have a negative, so I would change all the signs. Oops. Should change this one. And then let's go back to the top because we have to add another rule in here. Don't worry, it's not going to be complicated. Besides having no negatives in the front, you cannot have fractions for standard form, that is. Only for standard form. Slope-intercept form, don't worry about it. So no negatives in the front, which we just got rid of, and no fractions. So how am I going to get rid of this fraction? Well, they're both 3's, so I can just multiply everything by 3 and use my little trick that I did over here. And watch what happens. The 3's will go away. I'm left with x. I will get 3y. 3's will go away, and I will have 11. And now this is my answer in standard form. If for some reason you had a 3 and a 6, you would want to multiply everything by 6 to get rid of it. So you're looking at the least common denominator in order to get rid of your fractions. So as long as you pick the least common denominator, they will go away. So like I said, if you had 3 and 6, you can just multiply everything by 6 because 3 goes into 6. Let's see, I think I'm on example number 4. Double check. Number 4, yes. Example number 4, I'm going to tell you that I have the slope of negative 2/3 and a y-intercept of 7. Now remember, in the notes, I told you that the y-intercept is your b. And I also said that if it were a point, it would be 0, comma, whatever b is. So what I want you to understand about this question is that this is the point 0, 7, and b is 7. So whenever it gives you the y-intercept, if you're lucky, you already have b. So when you go to write your equation, you're all set. You just have to plug in negative 2/3 for your m and plug in your b, which is 7. And that is your equation in slope-intercept form. If you needed to write it in standard form, you could do that. Remember, you would just move 2/3, and it's going to be positive, right? Because we're going to add it to the other side. 2/3 x plus y equals 7. So now I have x, y, and then a number, but again, you can't have any fractions, so you're going to multiply everything by 3. The 3's will go away, and I will multiply it to the y and to the 7. And this would be your equation in standard form. Example number 5. Now I'm going to give you 2 points, and I'm going to ask you to write an equation. And you learned in section 3.3 that you can find the slope when you're given 2 points. So before, I gave you a point and usually a slope. And so if I give you 2 points, you can find the slope, and you can use either one of these points to help you solve the equation. So first you got to find the slope, and if you remember, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you just plug those in. So I'm going to have 7 minus 3 and 3 minus 1. And I end up getting 4 over 2, which is 2. And so my slope is 2. And I can use either point. It doesn't matter which one I choose. Either one will work. I'm going to choose the point 1, 3. And so now I have a point and I have a slope, so I can write an equation. I'm going to use y equals mx plus b like I did in the last several examples. I'm going to plug in my point, so it's 3 equals my slope, which is 2, my x is 1, and I have to find b. So I have 3 equals 2 plus b. I subtract 2. I have 1 equals b. So when you go to write an equation, you always have a y and an x. Your slope is 2, and your b found was 1. You would rewrite this in standard form. So I move the 2x over. I'd have to change the signs because I can't have a negative, and there are no fractions, so you are done. This is your slope-intercept form, and this would be your standard form. Last example, I know we've done a lot, this is the last one. If I gave you the point 4, 2 and 8, 2, again you need to find the slope so you could write an equation. So you would take 2 minus 2 over 8 minus 4, it's just y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and 2 minus 2 is 0 over 4, and you know that that is just 0, so that means you have a 0 slope. And remember, z for 0 stands like this. So if you remember, I told you the easiest way to find out what your equation needs to be is if you plot one of these points. You can plot both if you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, up 2. There's 4, 2. And you also have the point 8, 2. And if you drew a line through those points, you know it should look horizontal because Z for 0 slope, that you can walk on it, right? And you would ask yourself, okay, it's cutting through the y-axis at 2, and your answer would be this. And that is your standard form. That is any kind of form that you need from me for these type of equations.